So you may not have heard, but probably Yayati and Devyani is a very popular story in the Indian culture. So King Yayati had a wife called Devyani. Devyani was the daughter of sage Shukracharya. Sage Shukracharya was the priest of the demon class, and but they were Brahmanical. So Devyani was a Brahmanical cultured lady, and she had a friend in her youth. Her name was Sharmishta. So when they were young girls, they had some fight, Devayani and Sharmishta. And when Devayani married King Yayati, she took Sharmishta with her as her dasi. Okay, so as some punishment, she was taking her as her dasi. And dasi is like a servant, slave. So King Yayati had a couple of children from Devayani, his wife. And then he also had, like in those days, kings could marry many times, right? It was in the Vedic culture, it is allowed. So he also married Sharmishta later on without the knowledge of Devayani. And he had children from Sharmishta as well. Now, when Devayani came to know of this, she was very angry. She was upset that Yayati had done this. So she got angry and left and went to her father. And she complained to her father, sage Shukracharya, that Yayati has done so and so. Shukracharya, being a powerful Brahmin, in those days in the Vedic culture, they could curse, they could give a shrap and then that comes true. So Shukracharya was very angry and he cursed King Yayati that he would lose his youth because he was using his youth to satisfy his, lust with other. So he cursed him that you will lose your youth and become old. So immediately King Yayati became an old man. He became white hair, wrinkled skin. He lost his strength. And but he begged, like, oh no, don't do like this. I still love your daughter Devayani. I'm not done with her yet. This, that. So they have the power to give upashra, like something to counteract that shrap. So Shukracharya said, okay, if one of your sons exchanges his youth for your old age, then you can become young again. So Yayati said, okay, he had 3-4 sons from Devyani, he had another 3 sons from Sharmishta. So he asked each of his sons, will you exchange your youth? No, so no, the sons were like, what? We will become old at this age? So none of the sons were ready to exchange except his youngest son. And I forgot his name actually. So anyway, the youngest son agreed to exchange his youth. And so Yayati gave his old age to this son. I think his name was Puru. And King Yayati became young again. And then he continued to rule and he continued to enjoy with his wives and all that. And like this, many years passed. And in that yuga, people lived for many thousands of years. Okay, many lakhs of years. Yes, exactly. Lakhs and lakhs of years they used to live. So after many such years, of rule, Yadu was the oldest, but he declined. So anyway, so he enjoyed his life and his youngest son, he was like an old man. And so eventually it dawned upon King Yayati that, this lust has no end. There is no there is not a point where I am satisfied and now I'm ready to exchange back my, give back the youth to my son. And then he contemplated on it, like, whatever our desires are, whatever, and it all stems from lust. Lust is not necessarily in the connection with sexual matters, but it is a material desire. Anything you desire for materially is called lust. And he thought, there is no end to this, because the more I have, the more I want. And he came to the point where he came to a realization that I need to stop this. And in those days, they used to follow the system of vanaprastha and sannyas. Like even the kings, when they were done with their ruling and when their sons were capable of looking at managing the kingdom, they would hand over the kingdom to their son, whoever enthroned them, and they would take vanaprastha stage. They would go to the ashramas of sages and spend the rest of their lives in spiritual pursuits. In fact, that has been recommended even in Bhagavad Gita. We will come to know of it. So yeah, King Yayati, he said, it's he also explained this to his wife Devayani, and so they also realized that this material world that we are living in with material temporary relationships, they are not the end goal. The ultimate goal is to achieve the love of Godhead. So at that point, King Yayati, he gives back his youth to his son, and then he becomes old again. And then he enthrones this son who had given him his youth. Instead of, he bypasses his oldest sons. In fact, he's the youngest one. So he enthrones him to the throne, gives him the kingdom, and he and Queen Devyani, they go to the forest where they spend the rest of their life in contemplation and they achieve moksha. So that was the story that Prabhu wanted to think. But I think the takeaway from this is that, we need to understand that material desires are non-satiated. We never get satisfied with them. But at some point, we need to focus on the real goal of life and the purpose of human birth. So that's the takeaway from it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of and one of the other takeaways, like we are all yayatis actually. We are all wanting to. We are attached to our body. We are all wanting to have our youth, I guess, preserved, so to speak, or whatever your state where you had, quote unquote, the most pleasure. That state you want to retain, but that's not how life is. Like life is a cycle. There's always birth, there's always disease, old age, all of these miseries always come with this life. And the point is to kind of get out of this cycle of birth and death, and that's the only way to do it, is by acquiring the knowledge and following through what we have learned through with the knowledge. And Bhagavad Gita, as it is, it's basically it's the essence of all Vedic wisdom, and this is what we are learning here. So any
what you said is right. Like most of the times, like we try to explain kids like what is luxury versus what is a need.
Yes, need and want.
So I don't know how many parents really understand themselves to explain it to kids, but that is very, very important and this stanza actually. Because if they don't understand it, it is all desire actually.
Yeah, and actually kids get it from parents only. Like we had Thanksgiving, like Black Friday, right? We rush to all these stores, and in a previous life we have also done it.
Yeah.
But now that we have come to this platform, we understand that running after all these material things just to get a few dollars of discount, and some people even lose their life in all that crowd. There a few years ago in Walmart there was a stampede for this. As soon as they opened the doors, people started rushing in, and some people got crushed. And is it worth losing your life for a few dollars of discount? So human life is precious, and we learn from this Bhagavad Gita that our desires are never ending unless we consciously control our mind.
Okay, we'll go to the next verse 14. Yashashwini Mataji. Matra sparshastu kaunteya Shitoshna sukha dukkadaha Agama payino nitya.
तां स्थितिक्षस्व भारत.
Synonyms: matra sparsha, sensory perception. Tu, only. Kaunteya, O son of Kunti. Shita, winter. Ushna, summer. Sukha, happiness. Dukha, and pain. Daha, living. Agama, appearing. Apayinaha, disappearing. Anityaha, non-permanent. Tan, all of them. Titikshva, just to try to tolerate. Bharata, O descendant of Bharata dynasty. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception. O son of Bharata, one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So here in this verse, as Prabhupada mentions actually in the translation, again, we are going to go through this whole aspect of, we are kind of, there is a analogy in Chaitanya Charitamrita, I think, where it's mentioned that we are all chewing the chewed. So we are actually just getting the same experience over and over again, and that's the reality of life. We always have happiness. We enjoy those moments when we have happiness, and then after some time that happiness ends, distress comes in, and we lament on, oh, we had such wonderful time when we were happy. But we don't realize that these are all temporary state. We all think that when we are enjoying life, we think that life is that phase is always going to be there for rest of our life. But that doesn't happen actually. So there is always going to be some lamentation on account of some distress. So Mataji, you want to say the purport?
Sure. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the proper discharge of duty, one has to learn to tolerate non-permanent appearances and disappearances of happiness and distress. According to Vedic injunction, one has to take his bath early in the morning, even during the month of Magha, January and February. It is very cold at that time, but in spite of that, a man who abides by the religious principles does not hesitate to take his bath. Similarly, a woman does not hesitate to cook in the kitchen in the months of May and June, the hottest part of the summer season. One has to execute his duty in spite of climatic inconveniences. Similarly, to fight is the religious principle of the Kshatriyas, and although one has to fight with some friend or relative, one should not deviate from his prescribed duty. One has to follow the prescribed rules and regulations of religious principles in order to rise up to the platform of knowledge. Because of knowledge and devotion only can one liberate himself from the clutches of Maya or illusion. The two different names of address given to Arjuna are also significant. To address him as Kaunteya signifies his great blood relations from his mother's side, and to address him as Bharata signifies his greatness from his father's side. From both sides, he is supposed to have a great heritage. A great heritage brings responsibility in the matter of proper discharge of duties. Therefore, he cannot avoid fighting.
Fantastic. So I don't know if there are any other questions, but one of the aspects of Maya or illusion is actually like material nature, or Maya Devi is actually, people consider her as more like a coach. And the coach is desire is to always have the student be perfect, right? So whoever he is trying to, who is in under their guidance, they want to kind of make him work hard. But the why do we want to make him work hard is because he can succeed in whatever sport that he's playing. So Maya Devi is actually coach. A lot of times people confuse Maya Devi as like, oh, maybe after learning this, maybe we should be afraid of Maya Devi. That's one thing, but we should not demonize it, right? So we are all in this Maya world, but it's not that she is also doing her job and helping us come out of illusions.
So I wanted to just add on this. So this is a very important verse, because this verse helps us deal with the the distresses of life. So when we are happy in life, we are obviously thinking of God. We are very happy, we are joyful, blissful. Very rarely we thank God for it. But at the same time, when we are distressed, when some kind of grief comes to us, that at least that time some people turn to God. Some unfortunate souls even that time don't think of God. But the more important lesson that Krishna gives us here is that we should know that whether you're happy or you're distressed, it is temporary, right? So even though there is some overwhelming grief that you're experiencing, know for a fact that it is temporary, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. So it's not that this will go on, because everybody at some point of time in their life, they experience some or the other downfalls, and eventually time heals us. So we know that whatever we are experiencing is there, and it will pass. Again, we learn from Shastra or Bhagavad Gita that our karmas also play a important role in what we experience in life. So whenever we experience distress, we need to know that these are because of fruits of our past karmas, and we have to tolerate them. Otherwise, there is no escape from them, right? So we have to tolerate them, and at the same time, we must thank Krishna that you are in our life, and he helps us go through all these experiences in life better than what we would have otherwise. Okay, so this is a very important verse here. He gives the analogy of the seasons, just like now we are experiencing winter, right? It's going to get really cold in January, February, but then spring is going to come, right? We know that spring will come, summer will come, days will become better again. So it's the same analogy for happiness and distress as well.
Um, Next verse. I think we have enough time for the next.
Yeah.
Yam
hina
hinam
vyathayantyete purusham purushashabha samadukha sukham dhiram somatatvaya kalpate.
Synonyms: Yam, one whom, he, certainly, na, never, Yavathanti, are distressing, ete, all these, Purusham, to a person, Purusha Shrabha, O best of men, Sama, unaltered, Dukkha, in distress, Sukham, and happiness, Dhiram, patient, Saha, he, Amrita Vyatva, of for liberation, Kalpate, is considered eligible. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. O best of men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. So again, I think this is continuation of what we learned in the previous verse. Happiness and distress are going to come, and so it's always a cycle. So after happiness, there will be time when we'll encounter the distress, and after distress, the stages of distress are there. Happiness will always be there. So it's a cycle. But the point is to get ourselves out of and be like a passenger who is not attached to these temporary states, the happiness states or distressful state. If we are unattached from these states, that's the best way to come out of and being affected by any of those emotions. Yashashwini Mataji, do you want to say the purport?
Anyone who is steady in his determination for advanced stage of spiritual realization and can equally tolerate the onslaughts of distress and happiness is certainly a person eligible for liberation. In the Varnashrama institution, the fourth stage of life, namely the Myak order sannyasa, is a painstaking situation. The one who is serious about making his life perfect surely adopts the sannyasa order of life in spite of all difficulties. The difficulties usually arise from having to severe family relationship to give up the connection of wife and children. If anyone is able to tolerate such difficulties, surely his path to spiritual realization is complete. Similarly, in Arjuna's discharge of duties as a Kshatriya, he is advised to preserve, even if it is difficult to fight with his family members or similarly his beloved persons. Lord Chaitanya took sannyasa at the age of 24, and his dependents young wife as well as the mother had no one else to look after them. Yet for a higher cause he took sannyasa and was steady in the discharge of higher duties. That is the way of achieving liberation from material bondage.
Fantastic. So here, I think in this purport, Prabhupada has mentioned the order of sannyas actually, and a lot of times people ask like, how will in this day and age, how will you take sannyas? Like a lot of people, so there are 4 different orders, right? So we have brahmachari stage, then after everybody is brahmachari, right? And after that, people sometimes go directly from brahmachari to sannyas, but that's not recommended for all. Like every guru is actually going to test each person individually. Like we have somebody who we know he is going through this phase. A lot of times people may be able to go through that because their situations are different, but time and time again it is very I mean, our Guru Maharaj Prabhupada has mentioned like sannyas is you can actually renounce even in this, like even if you are gruhastha, you can actually like in our stage we are gruhasthas, we can actually achieve the same effect of renunciation. So if you are just working towards what is beneficial not for me, but what will make our Guru, our Krishna happy, if you are just trying to achieve that, that's kind of a way to get the same benefits as a sannyasi. And you don't necessarily have to leave your grihastha life. I mean, there is all the other 3 phases or all the 3 orders are actually dependent on that one order, which is the grihastha life. I mean, as a brahmachari, you don't have any livelihood, so you are actually always dependent on your parents, or in our case parents are helpful and help us go through that phase. After then, we become Grihastha, we are old enough, we have learned enough. Now we start our own life. After some time, we go into the Vanaprastha stage. After that, typically is when the sannyas order is taken place. But then you can actually also fast track it and go straight from brahmachari stage into sannyas stage. But that's not recommended for everybody. Even this person that is actually going through this is going to be asked to be in a semi sannyas stage for 1-2 years. And it all depends upon how that person is evolving. After that, they may not recommend him to go through that sannyas phase because he may have some other some desires develop or whatever. So they are going to look up at your psychological build, how your psychology is situated, how's your parents situated, are they going to be able to survive without you helping them, because then that has also to be taken care of. So that's kind of the essence of what I'm taking away from this purport, actually, because it focuses so much on sannyas order, which is a very because there your mental state is your 100% relying on Krishna. Sometimes, like the sannyasis actually, which we come across, they don't cook. They are not supposed to be cooking for themselves. They can cook for the Lord, and then they can eat from that remnant. But a lot of sannyasis actually don't even enter into the kitchen. They don't want to kind of associated with that. So whatever they get is what they will eat. If they are not able to get anything, then they will just go hungry that day, because that's the whole complete reliance. And that phase is very hard to achieve, and very few people actually achieve.
Sometimes people understand like only Vanaprastha is the only stage where we start concentrating on the Krishna and forget about the other three stages of the life.
Correct.
So that is might be the perception of the people, like they read only Bhagavad Gita and Vanaprastha stage.
Exactly. that is the problem, that but in this verse again, Krishna talks about the qualifications needed for liberation. So he says the person who is steady in both happiness and distress. So to achieve that state of mind where we are steady in distress, happiness, of course everybody is happy, but being steady in happiness and distress requires training of the mind.
Yes.
It's not something that can happen overnight. And that is why we have to work from our childhood to achieve that state of mind where we are steady in both the experiences of life, right? Because we want to qualify. Liberation is not cheap. It's something we have to strive, work hard towards. Like even if we want to get admission into Harvard, we need some qualification, right? We can't just go with our mark sheet and say, oh, I have good marks, please take me. No, you need some qualification. So if we want entry into the spiritual world, into the Vaikuntha Loka, definitely we need some qualification. And Krishna is giving us information here. What is that qualification? So now that we have knowledge, we can certainly try to make sincere attempts, not that whether we succeed or not, that we can leave it to Krishna. But what Krishna wants is sincere attempts, right? So make some small attempts, even if they are small, Krishna appreciates it. So it's a very nice purport here.
Yeah, and actually, if you try to take one step towards Krishna, Krishna takes like 10 steps towards you. That's what we always experience, actually. It's like sometimes we want to achieve something. It will happen actually if it's that thought is pure, and it will there are situations where you are wishing for something, and then if it's not a selfish wish for ourselves, it'll happen actually. So that's kind of the end of today's session. We'll chant for 2-3 minutes, and then we'll say our ending prayers.
You want to do one round or just few minutes?
8:59.
Okay.
Actually. So we'll say chant for 3 minutes. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Hare Hare,
Krishna,
Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Hare Hare,
Krishna,
Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Hare Hare,
Krishna,
Hare Rama, Rama Hare
Rama,
Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama
Rama Rama, Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Rama,
Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare
Krishna, Hare Hare,
Krishna,
Hare Rama,
Hare Rama,
Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Rama.
Hare Hare.
माझ्या त्यातलं गेली लाईन.
आई बाबा तुम्हाला काही आहे प्रश्न किंवा काही रिअलायझेशन?
नाही
ओके.
पुढच्या वेळेस मी जरा ते पुस्तक घेऊन बसीन.
हा ओके.
हा ते आम्ही बसते त्यामुळे जरा माझ्या ह्याच्यातलं तर आता हे सुद्धा गेलं.
हो अच्छा. ते मी शेअर करत होतो ऍक्च्युली, पण आय डोंट नो तुम्हाला ते दिसतंय का?
नाही मी वाचत होतो ते,
अच्छा.
पण मी पुढच्या प्रभुपादांनी जे दिलेलं आहे ना मला, ते जे पुस्तक दिलेलं आहे
हा हा
गीतेचं, तर ते मी ठेवीन समोर.
ओके ओके
म्हणजे मग मलाही वाचायला एकदम बरं पडेल.
ओके. सो विल से आवर
कारण ते कमी दिसतं, ते लहान असतं ना, त्यामुळे वाचता नाही येत.
बरोबर.
नाही वाचायला काय, फक्त ते मी सांगेन तिला कसं करायचं तर.
ओके. We'll say our ending prayers. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे,
हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम
हरे
राम
राम राम राम हरे हरे. माझ्या याच्यातलं हे गेलंच.
बोलू नको तुझा आवाज.
ओके. चलो बाबा, मग थोड्या वेळात बघतो हा मी.
ओके ओके.
तुम्ही आता चालले ना
आम्ही
बाहेर?
आता खाली चाललोय. खाली
ओके
चाललोय आम्ही आता.
ओके ओके.
खाली खाली ते प्रोग्राम आहे सर,
हो
त्याच्यासाठी चाललो. हा?
चालेल चालेल.
आधी
चलो थँक्यू.
चला. अरे वेलकम. आमच्या ह्याच्यावर पडतं ना तेवढंच.
बरोबर. चलो बाय.
हो बाय. का जातो मध्येच काय करत नाही.
No. My thing also.
They're still
Yes, yes.
नका हे करू जाऊ त्याचं.